Yes, welcome everybody to Friday afternoon at the Manor. And I'm John Joseph Mastandrea. I'm the minister at Manor Road United Church. And this fall weather isn't it remarkable? It still continues to be warm. It's delightful. And you notice there's another image of me. That's me on my other device. And then, so we have a great lineup for this fall, but especially for today. And you'll hear a bit more about Lisa Gervais, but I will say Lisa and I we live together, on the same street. That's about as far as we live together. And she has a lovely cat, and it's quite a beautiful cat. What's your cat's name again? Maverick, yes. And then Susan Johnson, who was our wonderful idea person, who came up with this plan many years ago, maybe 2 years ago now, and she will introduce Lisa. And I'll say over to you, Susan, and you want to come over to the screen.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming today. Our speaker is, as he says, Lisa Gervais, who is the founder of the Redwing Institute, which is a nature-inspired learning institute. And so I'm waiting to hear all about this. Lisa, take it away.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So thank you so much for inviting me to speak with your community today. I was thrilled because I haven't done an in-person speaking engagement since March 2020. And so, this is the first time I've done something live, and I know it's a hybrid. We're doing live and online today, but when John Joseph gave me the option of doing it live or doing it over technology, I jumped at the chance of actually reconnecting with people because, as we know, the pandemic has been very long and isolating. And, as human beings, we want to connect with other people in a live setting. So it's something that nourishes our soul. So I've said, thank goodness we've had technology to keep us connected during this time and keep us safe. I just want to say thank you for inviting me into your community. A bit about me. So I used to, work in corporate and had a professional career, and that was going along well. And then I stumbled upon an area called positive psychology. And this really engaged me because it was about looking at people who were really thriving and flourishing. And a lot of the research in psychology is about taking someone who is not doing well and getting them back to what's considered normal. And what positive psychology does is it sort of flips that around and looks at the people who are the most creative, the highest performing athletes, the people who are having really thriving and flourishing marriages and relationships and doing so well. And what it does is it studies those people to find out what is it that they're doing that we could all be doing to boost our own wellness and well-being. And so based on that principle, I founded the Redwing Institute, which is looking at how we can connect with nature and the intersections between nature and this psychology and neurosciences research. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a bit about how we can tap into nature for a variety of different ways to keep ourselves healthy and thriving and flourishing, especially in these challenging times. So we're going to be looking at how we can enhance our lives for greater well-being and resilience, how we can be kinder to ourselves in these sort of difficult times and situations, and how we can use nature to improve our relationships and our connection. And so, as I said, this is all going to be grounded in academic research that's happening all over the world. The hotbeds of positive psychology is the US, the UK, and Australia, but we have a lot of amazing researchers in Canada as well. And I've had the good fortune of connecting with some of those people over the past 8 years. So we've all heard that spending time in nature is good for us, but why is that? So let's unpack for a few minutes why spending time in nature, what that does for us. So it provides us with opportunities to experience positive emotions. It can teach us about self-compassion, and it can activate our strength of curiosity. And so I'm going to delve into all those three. But what I want to do is I want to start off with a little activity. We're going to divide you up into groups of two, and online it'll be breakout rooms. And what I want you to each do in groups of two is answer the following question, which is I want you to remember a time when you were in nature and experienced a feeling of awe. So awe is one of the 10 positive emotions. And so I want you to think back, maybe it was when you were on vacation, maybe it was an experience you had this past summer. So, it can be from way back or it can be the recent past. Just remember a time when you were in nature and you experienced that feeling of awe. So let's break the groups out into groups of two. Okay, yeah, that would be great. So once you've had an opportunity to think about that experience in nature where you felt awe, I want you to each take a few moments to share with the others what that story was all about. And then we'll have you come back and share with us what your story was.
You're gonna get an invitation to go into the room. How long can we break up for?
We'll take maybe they can have 3 minutes each. Oh, there's something on the laptop. It just shows the breakout rooms in progress. Yes.
Good. Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to plug in me.
Are we able to send them a message?
Sure.
So maybe just put the question. So remember a time when you were in nature and experienced a feeling of awe.
What I'm going to do is during my phone, I'll be able to talk to you. Here we are. Now you can, Lisa, you can hear me and see me, right?
I can't see you. I can hear you. And I think we're getting
Oh,
feedback.
because you're spotlighted. Right. Okay. I should have unspotlighted you. I wonder if I can unspotlight you.
Where does it go? Sorry.
I shouldn't miss the top part. Oh,
'Can see you now.
18 months later, I'm channeling Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. I'll close the kitchen door. That's good. Okay. And so when in your life have you experienced a feeling of awe? Correct?
Yes, that's the question. So what would you say, John Joseph? When was the last time you experienced a sense of awe when you were in nature?
Oh, I would say this summer
So tell me a bit about that.
when I got my, it's still a bit of a reverb, eh? I wonder why. It's coming up more than one place. I'm not getting that. I'll speak slowly so there won't be too much reverb. When I got a telescope for my birthday, and I was looking at the telescope in the Riverdale Valley, and we were viewing the moon and Saturn. And then the awe went to a bit of terror when the skunk came along. It didn't spray us, just took a look at us. And we took a look at the skunk and said, thank you. The skunk didn't spray us. But no, it's a real treasure when you can be in nature, even in the city, and see the wonder of the night sky.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I have this great app on my phone where I can point my phone up to the sky and it will tell me where all of the planets are and the constellations, and you can see them all through this. You can look at the night sky, and then you can also see the constellations through the phone because it's mapping them all for you. It's very cool. And how often do people actually take the time to look up at the sky? You know, we kind of take it for granted.
Not enough. Definitely not enough. No. And I think I have that. Is the app called Skyview?
Pardon me?
Is the app called Skyview?
Yes, it is.
Oh, good.
You have
I have
it.
the same app, yes.
I think I showed it to you.
I think you did. Yeah, there you go. Oh, that's how the journey started. The other great part of feeling awe was each time I was near a body of water. And as whimsical as it may seem, even though we live near Lake Ontario, we don't see Lake Ontario. But we were in Napanee, and we were fishing and swimming in Hay Bay. We were on Lake Erie at Featherstone Point. We were in Port Sydney, and there's a lovely river. And we were in Millbrook, and again, there's a lovely river and very large pond lake. And
so I'm curious to know, what is it about water that provides a sense of awe for you?
I would say, especially in Lake Erie, when I was running beside the lake early in the morning, and you could hear the sound of the water, that reminded me of the ocean tide. And I almost wonder if it connects with some sort of primordial element within ourselves, that we all came from the ocean way back when. But there's certainly a strong connection in that capacity, I would say. Yeah.
So that's a great segue to what I'm going to share with the group, because there is a researcher that studies positive emotions such as awe. And what she's found is that when we experience positive emotions, it's kind of like the waves coming and then receding, coming and then receding. So if we have small opportunities throughout our day to build in connection to positive emotions, such as awe, it acts like a wave where they start small, but it builds. And it's actually very good for us, both our physical health as well as our mental health and our emotional health. Oh, I think you're on mute.
How about we bring people back?
Okay. There's some crazy stuff going on the screen right now. There. So should we close all rooms and bring the group back?
Should we speak up when we to say we're here?
Oh, great. Welcome back.
Yep, we're here.
All right.
No.
You're muted.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So let's debrief on that. Did each of you have an opportunity to share your experience from nature that brought you a sense of awe?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So who would like to go first and share what was the experience and how it made you feel?
Norma?
Norma, do you want to go first?
I'm just thinking
Yeah, just what you shared with us about the redwoods.
the redwoods.
Yeah.
Well, I was with a friend from teenage years. We were reuniting, and that was a nice situation. And I've always loved walking through the woods and the silence. And sometimes you hear the birds. Of course, all the time you hear the birds. You see little squirrely things running around, and it's just very delightful.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. The next person, would you like to share with us your experience with nature and how it's brought you a sense of the feeling of awe?
Well, for me, it was 5 years ago. A friend and I drove the Blue Ridge Parkway down in the southern US. So we were up in the mountains, and when you're up in the mountains, there is nothing but the mountains and the trees and the other growth. And it was in the late fall, so the colors were turning. It was glorious. But the thing is that there was no civilization until you came down off of the mountain, and it was like the feeling like this is how it must have been before civilization started, before there were people. And I said, this I think this is why they call it God's land. It's you can feel all of creation.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That's interesting.
Forests make me feel that way, and mountains certainly make me feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And our third guest, would you like to share your experience in nature and your feeling of awe?
Is that Betty you're talking to?
Yep, that's you, Betty.
Okay, I'm the third. Yeah, no, I was just this summer, my friend is trying to teach me kayaking, so I'm pretty novice. But we were in a little bay, and I was kayaking nicely along when 7 Canada geese decided to land in front of me. And I thought, no, what is one supposed to do? I don't know the rules for traffic here. So I just stopped, and I thought, well, I'll just wait. And the geese, the 7 of them, just made a nice line in a straight row, straight beside me. So I guess they said I could paddle on, so I did. And we just paddled, and they swam on to the shoreline. It was very sort of feeling in companionship with them, and that they accepted me on the water, and I was okay to be there. There we are.
Yes. It's amazing how the animals are willing to share their space with us, right? Because some people would think, it's our space and they're invading, but really the animals were here first. So yeah, it's amazing how they're willing to make room as well as go about their daily routines. So that's fantastic. Thank you. While you were away, John Joseph shared with me his experiences this past summer with looking up at the night sky through a telescope that he was given for his birthday, and looking at all the wonderful stars and planets and constellations, and how we don't take enough time to just look up. I mean, the sky is always there. We kind of take it for granted. My mother and I were on a road trip recently, and it was sort of late afternoon, and she said, "Wow, look at the clouds." And it looked like someone had taken a paintbrush and painted these white puffy clouds, but then at the end kind of did a bit of a smear. So the clouds all had these really cool tails attached to them. And it was just a series of these clouds with these tails attached to them. And it was just so magnificent. And we just, we were driving and we were watching these clouds in front of us, and just fantastic. And it was a beautiful blue sky. So just a great backdrop for the clouds. The other story that John Joseph shared with me is all the opportunities he had this summer to connect with water, and how, again, we live on one of the largest bodies of fresh water in the world. Lake Ontario is right in Toronto, and sometimes we don't even think about it, that it's so accessible and right there, and we sort of take it for granted. But if you go out on a boat in Lake Ontario, you realize what a vast body of water it is. When you're out there far from the shoreline, it actually feels like you're in the ocean and not just a lake. But it's just an incredible feeling of connecting with nature. So thank you for sharing your stories. Those are all great. And, whether it's forests, whether it's mountains, whether it's the animals, whether it's water, the nice thing about nature is it's all around us. So it's always accessible. You don't need special equipment. It doesn't matter, where you are, you always have accessibility to nature, and tapping into the positive emotions that nature can offer us. So I'll tell you a bit about the science around positive emotions. There's a researcher out of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, by the name of Barbara Fredrickson. And if you haven't heard about this woman, she's amazing. Some people in the field call her the grandmother of positive emotions. And her research has looked at the 10 positive emotions, which are joy, gratitude, love, amusement, inspiration, pride, hope, interest, serenity, and awe. And what she's looked at is what happens to us as human beings when we experience these positive emotions. And she's come up with a theory called the broaden and build theory. So broaden and build theory talks about how when we experience these positive emotions, it actually broadens our view of the world. It expands our view. And they've even connected it to, how we have peripheral vision. It actually expands our peripheral vision when we are in a state of positive emotion. And it also, not only does it expand, it also builds resilience. So positive emotions buffer us against adversity, against challenging situations like the one that we find ourselves in right now with the pandemic. So this broaden and build theory, she's expanded over the course of her research career. And I was sharing with John Joseph when you were in your breakout rooms that she's equated it to, it's almost like a wave that builds as we experience positive emotions. So if we just, build in opportunities throughout our day to experience positive emotions, it has sort of an amplifying effect. And one positive emotion builds on the other to keep us resilient and protect us from adversity and negative feelings, and it buffers us. So if you can find opportunities to build in small, it doesn't need to be anything big like going out to hike a mountain. It can be something small, such as there is a researcher in Canada who has looked at when we're walking down the street and we just notice the hanging baskets that are hanging off the lamppost, or someone's front garden, and just noticing the beauty of the flowers and the colors and the textures, that gives us a boost of positivity. And so it's easy to do these things. Again, looking up at the night sky, it's a micro practice, but if you build in these micro practices, you're able to create that sense of a building of positive emotions. So that's one way that we can tap into nature to create a sense of well-being. During the pandemic, you can just be looking out the window and noticing what the squirrels are doing, and that will also give you positive emotions. So I'm going to move on. So that's one way. The next thing that I'm going to share with you, again, it's based in psychology and neuroscience research, is this whole idea of self-compassion. So there's a woman by the name of Kristen Neff who studies self-compassion. And if we think about our lives, life is messy and things go wrong all the time. And sometimes we beat ourselves up, for when things don't go as planned. And so, she's looked at how can we use what she calls self-compassion to really embrace imperfection and be able to adapt to difficult situations. The focus of this speaker series is really trying to connect the community around interesting topics, but also get people connected, because the pandemic has been a very isolating time, and isolation and people living alone was considered a problem even before the pandemic. The number of Canadians living alone more than doubled in 35 years. So from 1981 to 2016, the number of Canadians living alone went from 1.7 million to 4 million people. So that's a lot of people that are, isolated, but, they were able to go out and do social events and connect with, different community members. And so it was okay that people lived alone to a certain degree. But with the pandemic, all that was sort of paused for a long time. And so, this is the challenge. In the US, there's also a recent study where people were asked, do you feel like you are no longer close to anyone anymore? And 39% of people said yes. And then in the UK, they found that this whole idea of isolation, again, this is pre-pandemic, was so severe. There were so many people in the UK who felt isolated and cut off from their social circles that they appointed a ministry of loneliness to really look at the problem and come up with some solutions for the entire nation. So isolation, we know, is challenging for people, and it's we are social animals. This is how we've survived, over the course of.
You use that small, but you can see it there.
And so, we survived because we lived in tribes. And if you left your tribe and went out on your own, chances are, a dinosaur would get you. But we are social creatures. And so this is another reason why the pandemic has been such a challenge. And so if we look at self-compassion and how we can utilize self-compassion to get through something like a pandemic, we need to look at, okay, so what does self-compassion really mean? And Kristen Neff's work looks at breaking self-compassion down into 3 distinct parts. 1 is self-kindness, 2 is mindfulness, and 3 is what she calls common humanity. So I'd like to explore those for a few minutes. And you can think about, I want you to think about a time during the pandemic where you might have been feeling, frustrated or lonely, or, a sense of, things aren't going well. And then think about how you could reframe that using self-compassion. So self-kindness, that's, when I say self-kindness, what comes to mind for that word? You can use the chat if you want to answer the question. So when you think of self-kindness, how can I be kind to myself?
Well, is it love yourself?
Sure, you can. Yeah, it's love yourself. Whether things go right or wrong. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just being kind to yourself, and not beating yourself up verbally when things don't work out well. Then mindfulness is about really just noticing in the moment what you're feeling and what you're going through. And if it's that you're feeling lonely, that you're feeling frustrated, that you can't connect with your community, that you can't walk into a store and buy something, you have to order things online because that's the safer way to go. Just notice there's nothing wrong with having these emotions, whether they're positive emotions or emotions like frustration. It's just noticing how you're feeling. But then it's then taking it to the next level and saying, okay, well, so where does the common humanity come in? Well, we've all heard that we're in this together, right? The pandemic, that's one of the things that one of the taglines of this pandemic is we're in this together. So the common humanity is, it's okay that I'm feeling frustrated. I'm sure other people are feeling frustrated too. And then what can I do about that? How can I use nature to connect to, more positive emotions? Or how can I reframe the situation using self-compassion to be able to not say, okay, I failed at whatever, but thinking more in terms of, I didn't fail, but, the situation didn't work out. It's really just about reframing. And when we are able to think about things in a more positive light, that's called a growth mindset. So an example would be if you wanted to do something and the pandemic was preventing you from doing that, you could get creative and think about, okay, how can I still achieve what it is that I want to do? How is it that how can I see my friends but still stay safe? And one of the options is maybe we meet outdoors and we stay away from each other and we go for a nice walk, to the neighborhood park. That way you're still able to achieve your goal of seeing people and staying connected, but also, keeping yourself safe during the pandemic. So that's self-compassion. And then the last area that I want to talk about is how we can tap into our strength of curiosity and how nature enables us to do that. So when you think of the word curiosity, what comes to mind? Like who? Oh, I think you're muted.
For me, it's the need to know.
The need to know. Yes. And what else? What other things come to mind when you think of being curious?
There, you're unmuted. You can use that. We've lost your connection. Just tell them we lost your connection. I'm trying to fix it.
Oh, will they hear it?
Yes.
Yeah, Norma has lost the connection and her friend Betty is going to solve the problem.
Aha.
But I'm using her phone.
Okay, well, while we wait, how about I share a definition of curiosity?
Sure.
So curiosity is the propensity to recognize and seek out new information. So exactly what Susan said, and experiences, including a natural interest in learning and developing one's knowledge. So if you think about it, when from birth, we're hardwired to be curious. And if you doubt this, just spend an afternoon with a 5-year-old, because they can't stop asking the question why, because they want to know. They're on a mission. They'll drive you crazy. And so somewhere in our journey from youth to adulthood, we stop asking these questions. Maybe people have told us, stop annoying me with all your questions. So we hold in these questions, but really, if we tap into sort of our natural inclinations, we are curious human beings. So,
Can I just jump in?
sure.
I never lost that ability.
Do you want to tell us the story about that?
When I was a child, I was very curious. I'm still curious. I always ask questions. I always explore. I'm the person in the course who will put in my hand. So many times they start ignoring. So I never lost that desire, inherent desire to explore beyond what I can see. Drives my partner crazy.
You're like the 5-year-old.
I'm the why. Why?
Why is a really powerful question. Why, what, and how?
And because it's not an answer.
So how does curiosity tie back to nature? So if you think about nature facilitates so many different things connected to curiosity, such as free play, the opportunity to explore, all of the sensory stimulation that we get by being out in nature. There's plants, there's minerals, there's birds, there's trees, animals, all the cycles of the ecosystem. It's like an all-you-can-eat buffet for the senses. And so when we become curious, we begin to ask more questions, just like John Joseph said. And how does this connect to our well-being? Well, researchers have found that when we are curious and ask more questions, our relationships improve. Because if we take an interest in someone else, both people experience these boosts of positivity again. And if you're curious about someone and you ask them questions, then there's a sharing that's going on between two individuals, and that builds connection and community. And so we're more likely to share good news with people who ask questions. And by doing so, it helps us capitalize on the positivity. So if something good happens to me and I share it with a friend, we both benefit from that, from developing that connection. It also enables us to navigate and resolve conflict easier when we ask questions versus just jumping to conclusions. So if I'll give you a perfect example. I was supposed to be in a wedding this fall, and it was decided that it would be better for me to attend as a guest instead of being in the wedding party. And the reason, it came to light through a series of questions that I just didn't feel comfortable with being in close quarters with the people who are going to be in the limousine and in the wedding party and doing photos, because I've been very careful this whole pandemic about, keeping my distance, really staying within a very, very small bubble of people. And so it was through those series of questions and answers that we came to the conclusion that I would be better off, and my sense of security and safety would be higher if I was sitting at a table with people that I've been bubbling with this whole pandemic. That could have gone that could have been a very different conversation if both the bride and I hadn't tapped into our sense of curiosity to sort of get to the root of why I didn't want to be in the wedding party anymore. I mean, it could have been a big problem, but it wasn't, because we both respect each other, and she understands now my perspective and I understand her perspective. She just wants to have a beautiful wedding with bridesmaids, and I just wanted to maintain my, what I've been doing all along during this pandemic, because I have elderly parents, and I just don't want to put anyone at risk. So if we are able to tap into the curiosity that nature affords us, that actually is able to get us to, use that muscle and develop that skill of curiosity. And maybe we can go back to our 5-year-old selves. So I want to just wrap up by saying that, nature affords us with many different ways to stay connected, to maintain relationships, and to be good to ourselves, especially during, these challenging times. And winter's coming. So I know a lot of people feel, a sense of isolation even more in the winter. But if you, leverage these things that I've taught you today, and I encourage you also to go explore some of the researchers that I shared their names and a bit of their research with you today. You have a lot of resources well within your control in terms of being able to weather this crazy period that we're living through right now. I know we're going to get on the other side of it, and it's just a matter of keeping ourselves healthy, connected, and safe, and being good to ourselves. So thank you. I want to wrap up by just giving you a short description of Redwing Institute. We mostly work with schools and corporate teams and community groups. And we used to work with individuals, but we've paused that for last year and for this year. We're starting up our school programs next week. But I invite you to visit our website. I'm hoping that we'll be able to start running our nature programs again in 2022. And thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to open up the floor to questions if that sounds good to you.
Great. So turn on your camera, everybody, and begin to ask your why.
Nice tie-in to curiosity.
Are there any sort of like guidelines on your webpage for your institute, ideas of what we could do until things open up again?
I haven't done that, but that is a good idea, actually. So thank you, Susan. I really appreciate that question. I will give it some thought in terms of what I could add. I will tell you that in the winter time, I do run an online program around this theme called hygge, which is a word from the Norwegian culture. The closest translation is coziness. And so I have ran this hygge program where once a day for a certain number of days, you get an email from me with a hint or tip or activity of how you can bring more hygge into your life. And hygge is what the people of Denmark use to stay happy and healthy and connected during their long winter months. And there's a lot of parallels between their winter experience and the Canadian experience. So that's an option for you. I post things on my social media channels. So we're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn. And so I have posted some information regarding the positive psychology research that I've shared with you today. So you can follow us on any of those channels.
Great.
So just to jump in, I think you've also mentioned that you're touched with nature, and I know you've led nature walks. So I'm just thinking about maybe on your website, you might post what some of those walks have been, and people could do, even in wintertime. I mean, with the advent of all the bike trails, there's also more pedestrian trails around the city. So you might even, there's also the K Garden Beltline. It's not that far from here.
That's right.
That's a suggestion. So that might be something you could recommend, perhaps write recommendations to people of which nature trails are really that work in the winter. Because in the summer, you wouldn't do the Rouge necessarily in winter, because you'd probably be stuck in the ice or something. But there are trails that are groomed. Are there any that come to mind right away?
Yes. So I have, during the pandemic, I have been hiking the entire, 18 months has it been. So I organize walks with my friends. So we've gone out to a number of beautiful conservation areas and provincial parks. And I think that the government is doing a better job of trying to keep as many of those open as possible throughout the winter months in order to provide people with the opportunity to get out into nature. You can also, just going into, parklands where it's a bit more accessible. Like I'm thinking the Brickworks, which is also not far from here. They're open all season long. And there's just connecting with like your local neighborhood areas is great. But there are some trails that they have closed for the winter just because they don't want people slipping and falling on the ice. So yeah, I think you just have to look at the websites to, but I might also take that recommendation and maybe put together a list of areas this winter that would still be accessible. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions? No. Okay. So I think there's just a few minutes left.
Okay, I'll start over. Yeah. Hello, everybody. So I would say my why is fired up like no tomorrow, and I think it's been remarkable. And I wonder why that one's highlighted, not the other. But we'll figure that out later on. Well, I know what I did. Oh, we won't wonder. Hold on a sec. We go over here, and you go to gallery view. There we go. Ah, isn't that better? No, it's been an honor to have you here, and as not only my neighbor, but as a person I've always wanted to figure out. We did talk about you leading a group from Manor Road about 2 years ago. Well, this is your segue into once we get back on the trails and in person, we can do that. Yay.
2022.
Yes, exactly. We're so excited and so fired up. So well, back to you, Susan, as our wonderful navigator of what we do.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lisa, and thank you everyone for coming. Next week we have Alex, I'm going to mangle his name, Zeritis, who is a great astrologer. He will tell you things about the stars and the planets and just everything you need to know. So he spoke last year, it was really well received, and we hope to see you again next week.
Thank you, Susan. He's our wonderful resident astronomer. And do have a great day. Take care, everybody. Signing off for now.